Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Swallowed Star 2 episode number 205 based on novel. So let's start. Yuan arrived at the fallen territories, observing the surroundings, his expression turned cold. Throughout his long life, he had always dedicated himself to the cultivator camp. Among the lords, Yuan contributed the most in nurturing young cultivators. Now, seeing over 100 world groups plundered and many source world origins devoured, how could he be in a good mood? The Ice Peak camp and the innate primordial camp are essentially the same. They both are innate primordial, needing to plunder numerous resources, and many like to devour source world origins. Yuan thought. At the highest level of the Ice Peak camp, there are 12 undying and undying beings, who occasionally also like to taste the source world origin. Besides these 12, the Ice Peak camp has some ancestors joining too. These ancestors have not reached the undying and undying, so they enjoy devouring the source world origin even more. The innate primordial camp is the greatest enemy. The conflict with the Ice Peak camp is also very significant. Yuan understood this. As creatures emerging from the source world, there is an irreconcilable conflict with any life group that likes to devour source world origins. Only by becoming strong enough can all forces be deterred from devouring the source world. Yuan thought, now, the 8th Lord, Luo Feng, has emerged, a lord mastering the power-breaking technique. In the future, a 9th Lord will emerge. Our cultivator camp will grow even stronger. Suppressing his fury, Yuan followed his senses straight to an ancestor-level being within this fallen territory. Whoosh! Wherever Yuan passed, rules operated, allowing him to cross infinite distances with each step, reaching a location in just a moment. Yuan, you are here. A warm voice sounded, welcoming a towering black figure enthusiastically. Yuan looked at the figure, a towering black figure clad in black scale armor, with a single eye burning with blood-red flame, looking quite fierce. But his smile was very bright. Wugu Ancestor. Yuan looked at him. The Wugu Ancestor, one of the 12 undying and undying beings of the Ice Peak camp, ranked in the top 5 in strength. If placed in the entire infinite primordial space, the Wugu Ancestor is also among the top 30, comparable to the Lotus Prison Mountain Master. I am here to discuss your occupation of over 100 world groups. Yuan said coldly, our cultivator camp and your Ice Peak camp are considered allies. Yet you occupy our territories? Is this what allies do? Don't be anxious, knowing you were coming, the Ice Peak Ancestor has already convened the highest level, and later the Ice Peak Ancestor and others will incarnate to arrive. Wugu Ancestor said. The Ice Peak Ancestor is also the highest leader of the Ice Peak camp. He led the establishment of this alliance within a huge towering palace. Accompanied by the Wugu Ancestor, Yuan also sat there waiting. In just a moment, 11 figures all descended, indeed the incarnations of the other 11 undying and undying beings of the Ice Peak camp. All 12 gathering clearly shows their regard towards the cultivator camp. Brother Yuan, a warm voice sounded, from a presence towering like an ice mountain, his whole body composed of deep blue ice. Even just an incarnation could glimpse the terrifying power he possessed. The Ice Peak Ancestor is a presence with strength comparable to Yuan. He possesses a nearly Wulan, indestructible body with mastery over endless icy power. His methods to threaten enemies are stronger than Wulan's. Ice Peak. Yuan nodded. The Ice Peak Ancestor has lived far longer than Yuan. They once experienced a period of life-and-death friendships, when the cultivator camp had only Yuan as the sole lord. At that time, the Ice Peak Ancestor established the Ice Peak camp and warmly recruited Yuan, who did not join, yet it did not harm their friendship. However, with the continuous strength increase of the cultivator camp, the relationship between the two has changed. Brother Yuan. Yuan. The 12 beings of the Ice Peak camp were very familiar with Yuan. Yuan greeted them one by one, then looked at a grey-robed woman. Elder Sister Shawju. Yuan's eyes had a complex expression. It's been a long time. The grey-robed woman glanced at Yuan, nodding slightly. In a long-past era, the universally recognized strongest being in the entire infinite primordial space was this Shawju, who was solitary and withdrawn. Her friends were few, countable on fingers. Her best friend was the Ice Peak ancestor. Her second best friend could be considered Yuan. When the Ice Peak camp was founded, the Ice Peak ancestor warmly invited, and Shawju joined. This made the entire Ice Peak camp terrifyingly influential. Later, the Starlight Lord emerged. The Starlight Lord, who mastered 2 primordial level paths, was considered by many forces to be the strongest existing now. Some still believed Shawju to be the strongest. However, one thing was certain: if the top 2 were selected in the infinite primordial space, it would definitely be Starlight and Shawju. During the confrontation between the 2 major camps, the Starlight Lord and the Infinite Snake Ancestor's void techniques countered each other, with both only able to exert a portion of their strength. The Infinite Snake Ancestor, skilled in void power, also had the backing of the infinite world. His void capability far surpassed the mother of space-time. In one-on-one combat, he was not inferior to the Ice Peak Ancestor, Mogus, and others, but was completely suppressed by the Starlight Lord. Elder Sister Shawju, our cultivator camp and the Ice Peak camp have always been allies, yet the Ice Peak camp took advantage of our war with the innate primordial camp to invade over 100 world groups. Elder Sister Shawju, how do you think this should be handled? Yuan looked at Shawju. This minor matter, discuss it with Ice Peak. Shawju said, clearly indifferent to the disputes over these hundreds of world groups. Elder Ice Peak ancestor firmly grasped Yuan's hand, sitting together. You know Sister Shawju's temperament. She wouldn't bother with these matters. Our Ice Peak camp and your cultivator camp are indeed allies, but you know, our Ice Peak camp is scattered internally, and it's difficult for me to completely manage them. When I learned they occupied hundreds of world groups, I immediately ordered a stop. But wanting them to give up the occupied world groups, it's difficult for me. Ice Peak ancestor looked at Yuan. Yuan also knew that the Ice Peak camp was quite loose, with the 12 undying and undying entities each having their own interests. Perhaps only Shawju didn't care about these resources, as Shawju cared most about this close friend, Ice Peak ancestor. Yuan was well aware of the friendship between Shawju and Ice Peak. For Ice Peak, Shawju would stop at nothing. 3,600 world groups. We cannot lose a single region in our cultivator territory. Yuan looked around. Everyone knows we've reclaimed all other invaded territories. It's only the 100+ world groups you've occupied remaining. Our cultivator lords will use the space-time net to hunt down all enemies within the territory. You dare? 3 identical-looking figures stood up, all glaring at Yuan. You dare to take action against us? Your cultivator camp is expanding. Is it wrong for us to occupy these 100+? These 3 identical-looking figures kept shouting angrily. After joining the Ice Peak camp, they loved attacking and occupying places the most. Nearly half of these 100+ world groups were occupied by them. Other undying and undying entities also opened their mouths to angrily reprimand, while some calmly watched. The 3 thieves of wind and thunder sea. Yuan looked at the 3 identical figures, sneering. Without the power of the Ice Peak camp, would you 3 thieves dare to occupy? In front of the cultivator camp, what are you? The 3 emperors of wind and thunder sea, weak in strength, ranked among the lower tier among ancestors. Yet due to mastering the characteristic of highest power, they were all undying and undying. The 3 relied on undying and undying, relying on the power of the Ice Peak camp, yet they loved causing trouble the most. In the land of eternity, all 3 were among the bottom ranks, so they banded together. Yuan. The 3 emperors of wind and thunder sea became furious hearing Yuan call them 3 thieves. Don't forget, one Mo man wiped out all 3 of you. Yuan sneered, indeed belittling these 3 thieves. Clearly weak in strength, yet always bouncing around. Lord Mo Man once, in anger, struck, forcibly obliterating their bodies and seizing their weapons and treasures. But these 3, no matter how much they were obliterated, they would still regain power. HMPH, the 3 emperors of wind and thunder sea were infuriated, but they also knew Mo Man restrained the three the most. Starlight and Jin also possessed the strength to obliterate three bodies. Yuan, it's only 100+ world groups, why harm the friendship between us? Wugu ancestor spoke with a smile. It's you hurting the friendship. One word, you must return them. Yuan said, looking around. Among the highest level of the Ice Peak camp, 12 undying and undying entities, each had their thoughts. Among them, besides the 3 thieves of wind and thunder sea who were quite weak, there were also those with extremely formidable strength. How about this? Ice Peak ancestor finally spoke. Yuan, both of our sides are allies. Our greatest enemy is the innate primordial camp. The Ice Peak camp and innate primordial camp needed almost the same resources. You know, the Ice Peak camp is quite dispersed, many matters are difficult for me to forcefully control. Ice Peak ancestor sighed, let's be considerate of each other, so Ice Peak camp will return more than half of the world groups. Retain 60 world groups, and I can appease internally. Around, a group of undying and undying entities also looked at Yuan. Yuan listened, then stood up. Not a single world group can be missing from our cultivator territory. Yuan's gaze swept over the 12 undying and undying entities. If you insist on occupation, then our cultivator camp will officially go to war with you. The faces of the 12 undying and undying entities from the Ice Peak camp all changed. War? Elder, you better think carefully. Ice Peak ancestor looked at him. Call me Yuan. Yuan looked at him. Those occupying cultivator territory aren't qualified to be my brother. Ice Peak ancestor's face turned cold as well. Yuan, I've already conceded a step. Your cultivator camp wants war. We who are undying and undying will not fear. Very well. Yuan nodded lightly, but I warn you, once war begins, the battlefield won't be confined to this fallen territory. All territories of your Ice Peak camp will become targets of our cultivator camp. Dare to invade here, you must be prepared to be invaded back. What? Some undying and undying entities were startled. Counter-invasion? We in the Ice Peak camp would fear the battlefield expanding. Ice Peak ancestor sneered, these undying and undying entities don't much care about middle and lower tier death. Then wait for it. Yuan swept his gaze and disappeared with a step. The hall fell silent. The 12 undying and undying entities each had their thoughts. Are we really going to war? Ice Peak ancestor glanced around in anger. So this is your decision? Ice Peak ancestor said deeply, you all insist on occupying the 60 world groups with the most vital resources. The result is out, Yuan and their 8 lords are going to war with us. Cultivator territory, Ming Yu world groups, this is the absolute territory of the cultivator Lord Ming Huang. The order of the entire world group operates according to the will of Ming Huang. Here, there is no soil for sin to survive. The core holy land of the Ming Yu world groups, Ming Huang Holy Land, gathers cultivators from all corners of the world group. To come to Ming Huang Holy Land, 2 conditions must be met, one is strength, the other is merit. Both are factors of consideration. For those weak in merit, strength needs to be extremely strong. With extremely high merit, even low strength can bring one to the Holy Land, to be close to the Great Lord. If burdened with sin, no matter how strong, one will be punished and has no qualification to receive the Lord's teachings. Buzz. Endless light of thunder illuminates the entire Ming Huang Holy Land. Ming Huang Holy Land's cultivators are peaceful. In the place where the Lord resides, no trace of sin can exist. Cultivator Fuiani, a half-primordial enlightened. In pursuit of escaping the braided cage, he cultivated using billions of souls as nourishment. In the past 320 million eras, he has cumulatively devoured creatures exceeding 1 trillion in number. The sin is heavy, I suggest the death penalty. The death penalty requires reporting, to be executed by world-level primordial personally. I think the death penalty is unnecessary. We can sentence him to endless wind punishment, which serves both as deterrent and contribution to the cultivator camp in the wind punishment land. Wind punishment land, a mine within the endless primordial space, where life in the braided cage originally cannot survive. however, with formation, prevents the erosion of endless primordial force. There, even without erosion of endless primordial force, the natural wind within the mine will repeatedly make the half-primordial enlightened suffer as if being flayed while continually mining. The sentence is eternal. Unless escaping the braided cage, there is hope for a change in fate. For those half-primordial enlightened, they would rather endure endless punishment, seeking the chance to escape the braided cage. Such sin, he doesn't deserve to live. I suggest the death penalty. I also suggest the death penalty. Great sin warrants execution. Cannot give him a shred of vitality. Fuiani is quite gifted, endless wind punishment is enough deterrent. Without escaping the braided cage, never to rise again. One by one, suggestions were made. Among our 9, 3 suggest endless wind punishment, 6 suggest death penalty, final decision, death penalty. Report immediately. In Luo Feng's absolute territory, the matters were handled by Cheng, who commanded numerous high-level primordial life. In Ming Huang's absolute territory, however, a world-level primordial was responsible for commanding and handling various matters. Fuiani, death penalty. A majestic figure learned the news, glanced at the weapon brought forth, the weapon once used by Fuiani. If he were the Lord, a thought leveraging causality could descend as memory pollution. Even if there is source world origin blocking, the information transmitted by the Lord could lead a small being in the braided cage to have their soul self-collapse and become annihilated. World-level primordial needs to rely on objects to descend causality attacks. If the pollution of high-level primordial life, the half-primordial enlightened within the braided cage might still endure. Pollution descended by world-level primordial life, even if it's merely memory pollution, unless the half-primordial enlightened will escape the braided cage, they can't survive. Buzz. The majestic figure, looking at Fuiani's weapon, leveraging the causality of the weapon, saw Fuiani hiding in the source world. With a glance, memory pollution transmitted. Fuiani, already anxious and uneasy, painfully clutched his head. In a few moments his soul twisted and collapsed, completely annihilated. In Ming Huang Holy Land. Beside a vast lake, there is a wooden hut where Ming Huang resides alone. She has set the rules, her followers will act accordingly. Within her absolute territory, depending on the severity of sin, various levels of punishment exist. However, for a world-level primordial to directly execute, it is rare. After all, there are laws in place, and those daring to breach them are few. My primordial thunder path, 8 parts thunder, 2 parts water path. Star can comprehend the second primordial level path, why can't I? To become a lord, one has to be extremely proud. I'm entirely possible to create the primordial water path, focusing on water. Though extremely difficult, progress exceedingly slow. Yet as long as progress continues slowly, there's hope. As long as not encountering a bottleneck, Ming Huang won't give up. Aside from Starlight, other lords are attempting ways to strengthen. Like Yuan, Nijiu, all can see hope. Like Wulan, Ming Huang, Jin, Mo Man are all trying to create a second primordial level path, but their progress is painfully slow because the first primordial level path aligns closely with their nature, the second primordial level path is less aligned, making comprehension harder. Luo Feng's nature places more emphasis on life. Primordial life and death Tao, focusing on life, cultivation proceeds smoothly. Even succeeded with power-breaking technique. Yet primordial blade path focuses on destruction. Though Luo Feng has deep research into destruction, the degree of alignment clearly diminishes. Even with the current Lord level insight, comprehension, thinking speed, comprehending complete primordial blade path remains challenging. Luo Feng, who employs power-breaking technique, comprehending the second primordial level path, is merely slow. Like Ming Huang, Jin, their progress is absurdly slow, and always at risk of hitting a bottleneck. Focusing on water. Ming Huang feels discomfort as she comprehends. Her strong personality, focusing on the water path, is excessively challenging for her. Ming Huang. Yuan's voice sounded, negotiations failed, prepare to battle with the Ice Peak camp. Battle? Ming Huang's eyes burst with golden thunder, compared to comprehending and cultivating, battle was much less difficult. It's time. Ming Huang's fighting spirit surged. In her bones, she never fears battle. Jin, currently seated on a throne. Above his head are 12 silver-white sharp horns like a crown, his sharp fingers gently tapping the armrest, while holding a glass of blood-like fine wine in the other hand, his silver-white scale armor tail slowly swaying on the ground. He is leisurely, content, watching over his absolute territory. In his absolute territory, the myriad clans compete for supremacy, a life-and-death struggle. This is the allure of life. Under the threat of death, life shines with its most brilliant colors. Jin admires some of the strong among the myriad clans' confrontation. If it were too comfortable, it would only raise a group of useless individuals. Luo Feng also follows the primordial life and death Tao. I thought he would understand me best. Although he acknowledges the survival of the fittest, he is so hostile towards tribulation cultivators. Jin gently shook his head. What about tribulation cultivators? They can, with their own abilities, become an eternal tribulation of a source world. That is also a testament to their own exceptional capabilities. Jin, on the contrary, appreciates those who, through cycle after cycle, completely suppress the tribulation cultivators that threaten a source world. He considers them the most exceptional selected under the survival of the fittest. Although Lord Mo Man does not hold the tribulation cultivators in as high regard, he also acknowledges it as the natural outcome of survival of the fittest and does not oppose it. Since the temperaments do not match, then stay away from each other. Jin, inherently proud, as a lord, an undying being, sees no need to please anyone. Jin. Yuan's voice sounded, the negotiation has failed. Prepare to go to war with the Ice Peak camp. Ha ha, it has come. Jin smiled. This is what he likes the most. Whoosh. In an instant, Jin had already vanished. Is it going to be war? It's here. Wulan, transformed into a massive celestial body, laughed and already traversed time and space. He never feared any battle, nor any opponent. Is it going to war? Within the endless primordial space, a vast land of flesh suddenly merged into Lord Nijiu. Lord Nijiu was very excited. As long as it was about hunting the ancestor, he would be very willing. Every ancestor's corpse would become his game. War? Countless fluctuations spread through the endless primordial space, even spreading to some naturally primordial races, sensing the souls of countless creatures, their joy, anger, hatred, all these strands of fluctuations merged into the primordial fluctuation, even the ancestors couldn't detect it. Interesting. Countless fluctuations were annihilated and dissipated while in the home source world the fluctuation rapidly strengthened. With the speed of energy absorption by the home source world origin, in a few breaths, Lord Mo Man had returned to pinnacle state. Under usual circumstances, he was dispersed into innumerable fluctuations, blending into the endless primordial space. Only under special circumstances would he concentrate into the main battle avatar. Ice Peak Camp? Lord Mo Man's eyes showed anticipation. I have arrived. Starlight Lord had fully observed the entire negotiation process, even predicting the reaction of the Ice Peak Camp earlier than Yuan. He had already set out in advance. Origin continent, origin world. Luo Feng was in secluded cultivation. As the youngest lord, he was comprehending the primordial blade path. In the early stages of comprehension, being in the accumulation stage, there were no bottlenecks, and a large amount of insights continually surged to his mind. Luo Feng, the negotiation failed. Prepare to go to war with the Ice Peak camp. Yuan's voice sounded. Luo Feng, in seclusion, opened his eyes. It has come. Clad in a blood-colored robe, Luo Feng instantly left his home source world across endless distances, directly to meet up with Yuan. Asterisk. The assembly point chosen by Yuan was also meticulously considered, being nearest to the slowest, Wulan. Although there were differences in arrival times of the lords, the difference wasn't large, allowing all to gather together. All present. Yuan nodded. Jin, Wulan, Ming Huang, Nijiu, Starlight, Mo Man, Luo Feng, each full of fighting spirit. During the prior council hall meeting, The Eight Lords had already decided to first eliminate all other weak forces, then negotiate with the Ice Peak camp. If the negotiation succeeded, so be it; if not, then go to war. The 3,600 world groups, absolutely not allowed to be occupied. Starlight, do you think the Ice Peak camp dares to wage war against us? Jin asked. They are not as united as we are. Starlight smiled. Facing numerous undying beings, even the Ice Peak ancestors' control is limited. Our Eight Lords jointly threatening them will cause disarray internally. As for whether to go to war, Starlight looked into the distance. It's uncertain. Let's see how strong they are. Lord Nijiu said coldly. Among the cultivator lords, he was considered mediocre, but in facing those ancestors, he was extremely strong. Move out. Yuan ordered. Whoosh! The Eight Lords set out together, heading straight for the conquered territory. Usually, the cultivator lords are busy with their own affairs. It's rare for even 2 or 3 to act together. Eight Lords' main battle avatars acting together? That's enough to attract attention from all forces across the infinite primordial space. The cultivator camp, 8 Lords acting together. Are they going to war with the Ice Peak camp? Many forces peered from afar, somewhat excited. 8 Lords. Individually already extremely intimidating, 8 moving together frightened even smaller forces. Wars among the 3 major camps are the most intense within the infinite primordial space. In this level of warfare, the likelihood of ancestors falling is the highest. This video will end here.